Hey everyone, today we have a special project. This is a Ryzen build for a community member of ours. ZDG is the lucky recipient of this build. The video will go up after he receives the system because it's a surprise. So the plan here, ZDG is one of those very interesting characters you run into in life. He has the most insane mad scientist electrical engineering projects that he posts to our Patreon, Discord. He found us on Patreon through the Discord community, and then other members of that community have put together an effort to purchase some of the parts in front of me to build ZDG a better system. Before that, this video is brought to you by Thermal Grizzly, makers of the Conductonaut liquid metal that we recently used to drop 20 degrees off of our coffee lake temperatures. Thermal Grizzly also makes traditional thermal compounds for use on top of the IHS, like Cryonaut and Hydronaut pastes. Learn more at the link below. I can't recall exactly what he's using. I want to say it's an FX series CPU, but either way, it doesn't really matter because it's pretty aged. ZDG puts a lot of abuse on his components, and what he does is basically just a lot of 3D modeling and animation posing work and things like that using a very specific piece of software called DAZ Studio, I think. It's one of the kind of like different ones we never really hear about. I don't know a lot about it except that it really likes threads, and so we're going to build him a Ryzen system with I think an R7 1700. The community members bought the CPU. I've provided through Gigabyte contacts the motherboard. Gigabyte sent us an AX370 Gaming 5. We have an EVGA CLC that'll go on. I'm not sure yet if it'll be a 240 or a 360. Depends on what will fit in this case, which the case here, so all the parts were either collected by the other Patreon community members who wanted to help ZDG out because he's always complaining about being stuck on rendering scenes for days at a time. So they picked the parts out, and then I basically went to manufacturers who make parts I like and solicited them to send more. So this isn't like they wanted to sponsor us. It was hey, I would like to include you in this video because I actually like the thing that you make. So pretty interesting stuff. It should be a fun build. I will note that ZDG, a large part of the reason he's getting this is because he's always very supportive of the community. So ZDG has bought every shirt we make in multiple quantities. He has helped build Zoid directly through contributions through Patreon, who of course works with us. And he's donated to several of the community members in our Patreon group who are streamers and things like that. So this is the community's way of giving back. I basically said, hey, I'll get the parts you guys can't afford, and then I'll assemble it. We'll make a video out of it, and hopefully have one pretty happy Patreon member. So parts, like I said, X370 board. I think it's a Ryzen 7 1700. We'll find out in a moment. I don't know what they bought. The community also bought a kit of Trident Z DDR4 memory. This is 3200 megahertz, and I think it's 16 gigabytes times 2. Oh, is it a 32 gig kit? This might be a 30. That's a really big purchase for the community. They pulled some money on this, so I think we've got a 32 gig kit, and looks like it. Yes. So this is 32 gigabytes, and this is almost a bit of a joke at ZDG's expense, but it obviously benefits him quite well. So this should be interesting for people who have watched the Ryzen coverage since the beginning. At the very beginning when Ryzen launched, it really didn't have great memory support, as a lot of you remember, and that's more or less been resolved. But one of the questions that ZDG constantly posts in chat is, can Ryzen support 32 gigabytes at the higher frequencies? So we're gonna find out. I think the answer is yes, but we're going to find out for sure, although we've already kind of done that to some extent with our own testing. We have a 960 Evo provided by another one of the community members, and I'll have a list of everyone on the side somewhere. GTX 1070 purchased, I believe secondhand by the community. Hard drive shipped out by someone. I'm going to clear the drive, and I'm going to clear the SSD before we go any further with them, just for security. And what else? Oh, pretty nice power supply actually from Silverstone. So Silverstone sent out the case and the power supply. I asked for the case specifically. This is the Primera PM01. We use this for our render machine and showed it in our render machine overhaul series, which there's a couple parts to now. And we've liked it a lot because it has really good ventilation and airflow, unlike another case we reviewed recently. This one actually has crazy good airflow. So despite having this mesh in the front, it's got, I think, 3 front intake fans, and they keep everything pretty cool. And that mesh front actually does a great job at keeping dust out, to the point where when we did a GN Render Rig update video recently, I pulled it all apart, having not dusted it for several months, and there was no dust internally. It was all in the filter. So I actually genuinely like this case personally. So we're going to use that for ZDG because I know he's a function over form guy. And then this I don't have experience with. This is a 550 watt Strider 80 plus platinum PSU. So quite a mix of parts. The parts provided by companies through our contacts were power supply, case, and motherboard and cooler. Then the rest is the community. So let's get to building, and we'll start with the X370 board socketing. This is a 1700, so we'll start there. Okay, so I haven't done actually like a proper full system build for a little while because I mostly work on test benches, collecting all of that data that you all are familiar with. So this should be a fun project for me too. A lot of our benches are similar to this setup. We've been working with Ryzen for a while now. It's had its ups and downs, but it's mostly up at this point, with still a few downs, but it is mostly better. We'll get I've got a tool for this. Okay, so I've extracted the I/O cover, just to use as a cutting tool for a second. All right, there we go. Don't need the subpar cooler. But Steve, the stock coolers with Ryzen are actually pretty good. No one cares. We have better ones. They can work a lot better. The guy is in like insane ambient temperatures. He talks about being in like 30 to 40 C ambient, and he's in the US. I think he's talked about 40 at the high end. So we're going with like actually good cooling, not unexciting stock cooling. Okay, we should be good there. This one you can just socket them pretty much wherever you want, but I do need to check the manual. I want everyone to know that Google search is an Intel shill. So I typed in Gigabyte X370 and it auto-corrected it to Z370, or suggested I should say Z370. Okay, doesn't matter. So we'll just go with the one that's a bit further away from the socket. So we've got a black and red kit, which is good. That'll go with our black and red on the case, but knowing ZDG, he might disable the LEDs because I don't think he likes those. Let's see, what next? I guess that's really it. I'm waiting on the CPU cooler. It's running some tests right now. So we're going to build all this without the cooler. I'll put that in last. And it might go in the top. We'll see. Not sure yet. That is some design. Did you guys know this is our supply? Silverstone, man, you guys, you genuinely make some really good stuff. But I don't understand the marketing. I would bet a lot of people in the audience probably haven't even heard of this case. It is one of the better ones on the market right now. But they just don't get as much attention as other brands, and it's not as much marketing in Western markets as a lot of the competing brands, so you don't hear about them a whole lot. Yeah, I should probably connect the... Oh, I see the problem. All right, okay. So Silverstone, when I was talking about making a quality product, there is such a thing as going too far. I don't know. That is the tightest panel I've ever had to remove. Should be good to go now though. Just for purposes of editing, because we're not going to leave that whole segment in, that was like a good 5 to 10 minutes of wrenching on the panel to try and get it out. It is clearly like, I don't know if the paint kind of dried or sealed it in a certain way. I'm not really sure what happened there. Okay. That fits. Might need the other one. Nope, that's right. Okay, there's our drive. This should probably get enough airflow with all those front fans. I could do a thermal pad between the SSD and the motherboard, but I don't think I have one thick enough for that. It would help. And you don't want to cool the flash on these, but you want to cool the controllers anyway. Syncing the PCB wouldn't be bad though, but we're just going to go with that. This is pretty elevated off the board. I mean, it's like a 1/4 inch off the board, so it's not going to trap heat in there from the PEX chips. But the kind of crosswind coming from the front should be enough anyway. Okay, so they bought an MSI Twin Frozer card. Is it a Gaming X? Yes, it's a Gaming X. You know, video cards, as you all know, are pretty hard to get right now. This one was used, I think, and I believe Zeta, the community member who bought this, already tested the card, so I think it's known to be working, but I'm going to do a validation pass on everything once it's built. I'll do a full benchmark and all that stuff, make sure it's all functional, and I'll even check the I/O, which I don't normally do, just to make sure that SSD is good. I want to say, I think Zeta got this for like, I don't know, 400, 380, something like that. It was actually pretty reasonable considering the prices, at least at the time everyone was looking. Cool. Okay, so cabling and cable management. Any other components left here other than the cooler, obviously? Not sure if the cooler is going to go in the front or the top. This case has this door in the front over here that it's just kind of a dust cover. You can close it, traps a bit of the air into the power supply shroud. It really is just to give you clearance for like a 360. I think we're going to go with a 240, but I'm not positive yet. I'll find out after our testing is done with the other stuff. It's an EVGA CLC cooler. I just don't know if it's a 240 or a 360 at this point. We'll decide. But everything else looks good to go. Oh, and I forgot to plug in the sense pin. Silverstone includes a sense pin for the 24-pin power on power supplies, so I'm going to have to do that too. Okay, so, all right, we got all the main stuff. Kind of weird doing the cabling without the cooler in there. This is all the crap I never plug in to anything, but build's not for me, so I guess we'll go ahead and do that. I hate USB 3 headers. Hate everything about them. I'm glad they're going away. They should have never existed. They break. They are angled in stupid ways. They're bulky. They're never the right length. All right, so that gets us most of the way there. I gotta manage the backside now. I will say, I don't really plug things into the front panel controller a lot anymore, working mostly on test benches, but it's the most insane part of like computer building. Like, I've talked with case manufacturers about this, where this thing should just be standardized, because the motherboards have different layouts normally. They should be standardized. Yes, it's one universal layout for all the different pins, and then it comes down to the case manufacturer to create a single like USB 3 sized header that you just socket into it and you're done. But the industry can't agree on what should be where, so there's no standardization. So we get some really dumb things like that that are genuinely very archaic. Okay, we've got all 3 fans there, plus the back one there. I'm gonna have a hard time closing this panel, I think. The cooler is done with the testing it was doing, so I'm gonna install this EVGA cooler. I have to find an AMD bracket for it, but we're gonna install the EVGA CLC 240 in there, which we reviewed. It should be online by the time this video is up. And I'm trying to figure out where I want to put this. So because I know ZDG is gonna be using CPU rendering for the most part, that means there's gonna be a lot of heat coming in if I front mount this. So it would be better for the CPU, but GPUs are way more sensitive to an extra 5 degrees Celsius than CPUs are, and there's so much clean intake in this case anyway that we can get away with mounting this in the top, and it'll be better for everything. Like, it'll be acceptable for sure for the CPU, and it'll be way better for the GPU because it's not going to get hot air blown into it for intake. My only concern is clearance with the fans on here, so I might end up mounting this inside of the top area. I'm not sure if there's room for that, but we're gonna check. I think we can probably, well, the tubes are gonna be a problem though. We can try top mounted and see if there's enough clearance for the VRM and the memory. It's gonna be pretty close. Oh man, that is very close. Unfortunately, the pain in the ass is that the fan headers here are never going to be accessible again, but we'll just plug these fans into those and that'll be fine. It is going to be like millimeters away from not clearing, but it will clear though. Does this come with an AM4 bracket? Yes, okay, good. Is this gonna reach? Yes. There we go. Okay, so EVGA is upside down like that. Okay. Okay, four matching cap screws. We can just manually spread it. we should be good to go from here. Okay, that looks like it's going to be good. All right, cool. So now I guess I'll plug in the RGB thing. So the upside to this one, this cooler, is that if you don't like the cable, the extra cable in here that I just installed, you can set it once and then it'll save the firmware, and then you can just remove it after that. So if ZDG wants to turn the LEDs off or on or whatever, he can do it, and then just open up the case to remove that cable if he wants to. I think I'm gonna route this under instead of over. All right, yeah, so install an OS, do some benchmarks. We'll do that for a part 2. I mean, the OS install won't be in there, but I'll do some benchmarks and then we'll send it out to him. I think I got everything. So at this point, I already got the, probably shouldn't touch the glass. We're gonna have to set this flat. Okay, got it. All right. All right, so that's the build for now. I need to install Windows, do some tests on it, and I think that will wrap it up. So we'll have the tests in part 2, which will be a little bit more limited, but it's just gonna be some quick benchmarks, power testing, maybe a thermal test, stuff like that. We should be good to go on everything though. So yeah, check back for part 2. Otherwise, by the time you see this ZDG, you should hopefully have the system, and hopefully it serves you well for whatever that program was called that I mentioned at the beginning of this video. All right, thank you for watching. Subscribe for more. You can go to patreon.com/gamersnexus if you'd like to join the Discord community that put this together. And that's all. I'll see you all next time.